Spats alcoholic. I found necessary to have a drink since January 25th, 1981, so it's good to be here. So let's talk about insanity for a while. Let me tell you something. They were looking for a guy to talk about the second step, about insanity. They got the right fellow in me, I can tell you that. I've got personal experience, you know. When a man with experience meets a man with money, the man with experience will walk away with the money, and the man with the money will walk away with an experience. And if I have experience with anything, it's insanity, up to and including tonight. So I haven't necessarily grown out of it. So it's good to be here with you guys. So I'm sitting in the car room one day. It was my home group for about 20 years, and I think I had about 3 or 4 years. I can't remember. You know, when you get old, the memory gets shot. And I want to point out something to you. The drinking's but a symptom of the disease. The drinking isn't even the problem. As a matter of fact, you might as well go out there and drink. What the fuck, you know? I just want to wake them up, see if they're awake. Give somebody a resentment who invited that guy. No, really, the drinking is not a big deal. First of all, I want to let you know something. There's nothing you can do about the drinking. There's absolutely nothing you can do about the drinking. You're going to stop drinking when you're ready to stop drinking. And you're going to stay stopped from drinking when you're ready to stay stopped from drinking. And most people in AA are probably going to drink again. Listen, do yourself a favor. Ignore 90% of what I say. I'm going to say stuff just to bother you and wake you up and piss you off, because if I piss you off, if you get upset, our spiritual axiom, that means we don't even question this. We don't even question this. Is that whenever we're disturbed, no matter what the problem, there's something wrong with you. And so if I can manage to get maybe 25 or 30 or 50% of you guys walking out here being pissed at me and being pissed off, you'll either drink over the resentment, or a week from now, you'll say, why did I hate that son of a bitch, you know? And the ones who want to get sober will say, I got to put that asshole on a list. Russell, he said I was going to drink again, it affects my dinner, and then what am I doing? Well, I keep on hating them and talking bad things about them, and you go through this whole thing, and you tell your sponsor, and you'll pray for me, and you'll discover something about yourself. You'll discover something about yourself, and you'll change. And when I say stuff like that, it'll no longer bother you. You just won't be bothered. Not only that, you realize there was something about my personality or the way I talk. You know, we're supposed to have principles before. It's not what I said, really. It's just like you just don't like my personality. And then you realize that you don't like anybody with a personality like mine. You know? But since I don't bother you anymore, most of the people on the planet Earth that have my personality, they won't bother you either. And so if you go through life and get pissed off a lot at a lot of things, and come to the conclusion that the problem is not the stuff you're being pissed off at, because that's never going to change. The people are never going to change. Life is not going to change. If you realize that the real problem is that is your reaction to things, and that you get pissed off a lot, and you go through the spiritual exercises, and especially if you believe in God, that's a must, by the way, and you pray to Him, you try to figure out why things bother you so much, what'll happen, every week you get pissed off at something, you'll keep on doing it, and you know, by the time you got, 20, 30, 40 years, nothing will piss you off anymore. You won't be disturbable. And then you won't do stupid shit. And you'll find you don't have to run around making amends to people, because you won't be doing stuff to hurt people. And hopefully, yeah. And not only that, you won't be having conversations telling yourself you're an asshole. You're a piece of crap, because you think about what you said or what you did and what people are thinking about you. And you might even lose fear of people and of economic insecurity. And then you'll live a whole different life. You'll be rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence. You'll experience much of heaven and no peace. Because your entire personality will change. So, forget that. That's bullshit. You know, I'm going to drive home and say, why did I tell him that shit? You know what I mean? I just have stuff that goes, I don't know. So, in any event, but in any event, that really is the truth. You know, when you're ready to stop drinking, you'll stop drinking. It won't even be because you want to stop drinking, because you don't know how to stop drinking. It'll basically be because God's been chasing you. It'll catch up to you for a second, and through some power that you don't even understand, or you don't even know, or you don't even like, you'll be given the grace to stop drinking and the ability to make a decision to go to an AA meeting. But then what will happen to you is what happens to me, what happens to everybody in AA. As soon as you stop drinking, your life gets better. You'll start checking your bank account again. You'll start worrying about important things like money. I mean, it's not important. It's just right up there with oxygen. You worry about getting laid. You worry about whether you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You worry about all the things that you see on TV and all the commercials and everything like that. The material things of this world. And then his presence in your life will be blotted out by worldly clamors. And you'll no longer think about God. He won't be the central factor of your life. And your personality will start coming back again. And you'll start chasing the same shit you were chasing and thinking about the same crap you've been thinking for the last 30, 40, 50 years, because that's the real you. And you'll find yourself slowly, you'll go to meetings. They'll sort of help you out, but even at the meetings, you'll be thinking about all that other stuff. You'll go to meetings where they talk about problems and stuff. You want to hear about God. And eventually get to a point with 5 years or 10 years, something like that, where you won't be happy with your sobriety, and then you'll know loneliness if you do, and you'll be at the jumping off place, or you'll drink again. And you won't know why you're drinking. And the reason you're drinking is because you don't have God in your life. You're just playing God by thinking a lot and saying, well, I'll do this and I'll do that, and making plans for your life. And that's the deal. I don't even know why I said that stupid shit. You know, I say shit like that all the time. So what the real problem is that if you're an alcoholic, you're fucking crazy. You're insane. I'm talking to crazy people here. I know I'm talking to crazy people. You know why? Because I am a fucking crazy person. And it takes one to know one. I know my sheep and they know me. And you are crazy. And let me tell you what the really crazy part is. You have no fucking idea how crazy you are. Not even a clue. Because you think, and when I say you, this is a generalization. All generalizations are bullshit and they're all dangerous, including this one. But what happens is you tend to think your craziness has to do with the fact that it has something to do with drinking. You think it has to do with drinking. So when you stop drinking, you think, well, everything's going to be okay. Nothing could be further from the truth. The traffic doesn't give a shit that you stop drinking. Your landlord doesn't give a crap that you stop drinking. Nobody, they say they care. AA cares, they love you, they give you medallions and shit. But the world doesn't really give a shit you stop drinking. Cancer doesn't care you stop drinking. The people that disappoint you don't give a crap that you stop drinking. And you're going to find that you're going to experience all the crap that the world has to offer, and you're going to get to experience it sober. Oh, look at that.
Running out of material?
I love Stevie Lee. He's here. He's probably the only guy I actually listen to. You know? It's because I love hearing myself. But in any event, I didn't even say that. And that's not me. That wasn't me. You know what I mean? It's like inspirational thinking. So what happens is, and you'll start playing God. And the way you play God is you will not be involved in inspirational thinking, which becomes a working part of the mind, you'll be involved in what's something called intellectual thinking, trying to figure out how you can get more money, how you get people to like you, how do you get a better job. You'll wake up saying, if I only had this, if I only had that, comparing your insides with other people's outsides, worrying about all this, and then all the craziness will sort of come back in, because ever since you were a baby, that's the way you thought. That's the way you think. That's just the way you think. That's your insanity. You don't think you're insane because you've always thought that way. And it feels comfortable for you to think that way, to judge people that way, to gossip about people, to talk about your life, to feel sorry for yourself. And that doesn't go that's why you drink, because it leads to frustration, because drinking is sort of like a way of committing suicide, but you get to wake up in the morning. Get me off this fucking planet, you know what I mean? This is all bullshit, you know? And then you drink, but you really want to kill yourself. That's why a lot of alcoholics, after they stop drinking, they don't drink, but thinking about suicide says, they'd rather blow they worry because they don't want to drink, but they think about killing themselves. That's actually a sign of getting better. Really, it is a sign of getting better, don't you think? When you get to the point where you're not going to kill yourself, you're not going to drink, but you may kill yourself, you know, you may commit suicide. That's something, isn't it, you know? But it's an indication that the insanity is still there. But the problem is, as it says in the big book, selfishness, this is a generalization. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that's the root of our trouble. We're selfish. We're selfish in every way you could possibly imagine. And we're filled with 100 forms of fear. And we don't even know how many forms of fear we're scared of. We don't even know we're scared. We deny we're scared. We're so insane we don't know how scared we are. 100 forms of fears. And what it says, it says, we're selfish, self-centered, filled with 100 forms of fear. We step on the toes of others. We hurt other people. We do stupid things. Sober, physically sober, we do stupid things. That's why we got this 10th and 9th step and all that stuff, because we're always screwing up. We do stupid things sober. We make decisions based upon self, though we're self-will, we're in riot, whatever that means, because we don't even know what that means. We really don't. It sounds good. We know how to memorize. I can memorize self-will and riot, but what does it really look like? The only way to find out how crazy you really are is you have to get a nightmare in your life. You got to find a nightmare. I think that's what I'll call this meeting. Looking for the nightmare. You don't even know what I'm going to talk about.
Not yet.
I know, you don't know yet. You got to find the nightmare. You got to find the worst fucking person you could find in your life. Because you're looking in the wrong mirror. I was looking in the mirror this morning. I said to my wife, man, I look terrible.
Keep it family friendly.
So,
Go ahead.
I don't want any comments from the peanut gallery. I said, man, I look terrible. And my wife says, yeah, but at least your eyesight is good. But anything, no problem with that, you know. Yeah, I was Dickie. That was my wife. She who must be obeyed. So in any event, so you got to find some way of looking in a mirror, where you're told the truth you don't want to hear. You know, you got to find that person that's willing to tell you what's really going on, and then you have to have the capacity to listen, or maybe the capacity to be honest with yourself in such a way so that even when you walk out the door and say that guy's an asshole, maybe a week or two down the road you start thinking, why did he say that? You just can't let it go. And then you learn something about yourself. Because we really don't have, one of the insane things we have is we don't have a way of really looking at ourselves. And we tell ourselves lies. We rationalize. We tell ourselves rational lies. So I'm walking down the street the other day. And so how do we find out about this insanity? Well, we find it out by living life sober. Because if you're an alcoholic and you live life sober, you will run headlong into your own insanity. By the way you react to life and the way you think and the way you are. because the crazy thinking doesn't stop. Well, certain things stop. The stuff is that is directly attributable to drinking booze. Stop. You don't get arrested for driving while drunk. That stops. A lot of things you did while you were drunk, that stops. Yeah, but they don't arrest you for driving while feeling sorry for yourself, or driving while greedy, or driving while hating, or driving while hating yourself. All the self-hatred, all the justification, all the blaming, all the feeling sorry, that sort of sticks around. You can go to a meetings, and many times you go to a meetings because of those things. You don't know you're going to meetings because of those things. You just go into a meeting, you say things like, I needed this meeting. And when you say the words, I needed this meeting, that's Alki code for my fucking brain is ganging up on me. But you don't even know that's what's going on, because you say, I needed this meeting because of my mother, or because of my boss, or because you'll blame something in the world. That's why you need the meeting, because obviously you need the meeting, because anybody who's going through what you're going through, you need a meeting too. But the truth is, you're really going to the meeting because you're crazy and stupid. That's the reason. But you don't know that. You think you're going to a meeting because of some guy or some gal, because that's the way you've always thought. You've blamed somebody else, that if only everything would be okay, then I'd be okay. If only I had more money, I'd be okay. But that's the way you think that. And that's such a natural way of thinking. And it seems so real to you. And you really do believe that everybody is exactly like that. Because all the people you hang out with, and everybody you've always hung out with, think the same way. So to you, it's natural. Now, if you hung out in church, I'm being serious about it, or with people who are believers. And yes, I know there's hypocrites in church, and there's hypocrites in AA, and there's hypocrites all over, and there are bad people in church, and child molesters, and all that sort of stuff, because church isn't perfect or anything like that. But you might find people that live, let's say, a godly life, or who really are focused on God, really are doing the steps that we do in order to get where they're at, because that's why they say we lose all prejudice even against organized religion, because we begin to see where some of those people are right, because the closest thing to what happens in AA to an old-timer who gets emotionally sober is somebody who actually is in church, who may not have alcoholism, maybe they're selfish, they're self-centered and everything like that, but because of belief in God and they follow certain rules, they get to a point, they sort of look like what an old-timer looks like, an AA that's got his shit together. But if you hung out there, you would run into people, just like you run into people here, that have cancer, that have lost loved ones, that are broke, and somehow they always seem like they love other people and they're not hurting people, and they care about other people and they love life. And so those are dangerous people to you, because you can't say to those people, well, if it happened to you, you'd feel the same way. Because all of a sudden you hear a story that this guy's wife of 60 years just died, and he's trying to help other people in an AA meeting, and you say, I don't know what the hell that guy's got, but I couldn't do that. And then it's not really about the drinking, is it? It's about not reacting to life and being like that guy, right? The funny thing is, what you don't realize is if you get to be like that guy, you never drink. You never drink, you never hurt other people, you never feel shitty about yourself. But if you don't get to be like that guy, no matter how many meetings you go to, you will eventually drink or feel crappy about yourself. So it no longer becomes really not drinking, going to meetings, although you think that's what A is all about, because that's what 90% of people think it's about. It's really about don't think and go to meetings and try to be like that guy. Try to be like the six-step guy, the guy who's separated out, the men from the boys, because he's growing in the image and likeness of the Creator, so he takes his stuff seriously. And he's not playing God. He's not making believe he believes in God. It's not the God of his imagination, and therefore he's not doing imaginary sobriety. He's doing real emotional sobriety, because the God he believes in is real. It's so real that it becomes the most important thing of his life. God is everything. He's not nothing, and there is no middle of the road solution. And it's so real to him, and he's so positive about it. He'll talk about it at meetings, even though he knows other people reject him because he doesn't judge himself by what you think of him, which is another form of insanity. That's what alcoholics do. They judge themselves based upon what they think other people think about them. And that's one of the reasons. And so when you have a group of alcoholics, you have really a group insanity going on, because this ain't Well People's Anonymous. And most people aren't old timers. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but most of the people are still involved with the insanity. So what happens is we float down to the lowest common denominator, and people are always trying to blend in so as not to be uncomfortable, instead of being lifted up into an uncomfortable position, but a better position which will allow you to stay sober and become like a fucking grown-up. You understand? By the way, ignore everything I just said. I'm not even sure I'm right about that. You know? Yeah. So I just say that. I don't want you to take me seriously. It's just crazy musings. So I'm walking down the street. This is a true story. This is important stuff. It's nothing to chuckle about. And I see a sign, and I've been on many, many cruises. I'm about to go on one. I don't even want to go on cruise. I don't want to do anything anymore. No, I really don't. My life is over. I'm 76 years old. Save yourselves. I have no bucket list. No bucket list. I don't need a new car. I don't need a new job. I don't need a new anything. I don't need nothing. There's nothing. I don't wake up saying, "Oh, if I only had this," nothing. Zero. It's over for me. So, which is a good place to be, because then you don't have to think about. That's a whole bunch of stuff you don't have to think about. Believe me, the last thing I want to do is be thinking about anything. What was it? I have a young man here at the meeting. He asked me one day, I think I told you this last week, he said, "You ever meditated?" I said, right before me, he says, "You ever meditate?" He said, "Sure." He says, "When?" I said, "When I'm not talking to you." You hear me and you think I actually think a lot. As soon as I'm done talking, I don't think until tomorrow morning. You know what I mean? Until I go to a meeting and turn on the thinker. I'm walking down the street, and it's it's about an alky cruise. You guys ever been on an alky cruise? So I'm walking down the street, I see a sign, "Cruise to the Caribbean, $10. So I'm just crazy enough to believe that shit. So I walk in and I say to the guy, I said, "There's a sign out there, cruise to the Bahamas, $10. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Is that legit?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "A cruise to the Bahamas, $10. He says, "Absolutely." He said, "It's a real thing." He says, "Listen, you got $10? I said, "Sure." He says, "You're on the cruise." He says, "Give me the $10. You're on the cruise." So I give him the $10. Next thing that happens, I get whacked upside the head and I go unconscious. I wake up sometime later. I don't know whether it's 6 hours a day later, and I'm floating in the Gulf Stream in an inner tube, and you can't see any land around you. I'm looking around. I don't know where I am. I'm floating. I know I'm floating like west. East. I'm floating east. Because I can tell by the sun which way I'm floating, and I have no idea how I got there. And all of a sudden, in the distance, about 100 yards in distance, I see another guy in an inner tube. Same inner tube. So I paddle over to that son of a bitch, and he's there. He's got a baseball cap on. He's there. And we're floating like together, east. I suppose in the directions of the Bahamas, or the general direction. So I say to him, I said, "This is unbelievable." I said, I tell him what happened. He says, "Yeah, tell me about it." They whacked me upside down. I gave him 10. He says, "Hey, listen, you're telling me. We got the same inner tube, don't we?" You know what I mean? He says, "I know." He says, "This is unbelievable. These guys, they can be charged with murder. We could die out here. There's like sharks out here. We don't even know where we're going or what's going on." He says, "Hey, you're telling me." And the sun's going down and we're floating. I said, "I just can't believe this." He says, You're telling me. And then we just sort of float together for about another hour or so while the sun's going down. So I finally turn to him and I say, you think they feed you on this cruise? And he goes, well, they didn't last year. That's the kind of fucking insanity you got. That's what you got going for you. Trust me, that's exactly what you got going for you. You're floating to the Bahamas in an inner tube, and you can't believe the jam you're in, and it's the third fucking cruise you've taken like that. And you paid $10 for it. So I'm sitting in the Carl Gables group, and I got about 3 years. And I'm looking at the board, and I got about 3 years. And the gal with the longest time is Harriet Rawls. She's got like 34 years or something like that. She got 34 years. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm sober, and I'm going to meetings. And I'm thinking to myself, man, wouldn't it be great to be the person with the longest time in the group? Man, I wonder what that's like. You know?
No.
And I'm sitting there, and I realize that in order for me to be the longest time in the group, everybody else, up to Harriet, has to be dead. You understand that? Is that for me? Because sometimes I was expecting a call from the president. So I'm, everybody else has, and I was okay with that. With everybody else being dead, And so I said, so now most of the times I am the longest guy in the group, so I'm going to tell you what it's like to have 44 years. Anybody ever wonder what it's like to have 44 years? There may be something more. I'll tell you what it's like. It's like I either want to go to sleep or go to the bathroom. Pretty much at 45 years. And I don't remember shit. So I sponsored a guy named, so let's talk a little bit about insanity. I sponsored a guy named Tommy. I was a major crimes prosecutor, division chief in the state's attorney's office. And one of my buddies was a guy named Tommy, and we used to try murder cases together and stuff like that. And I came into AA, and 3 years later, I get a call from Tommy. And he's strung out, sleeping on a probation officer's floor, and great lawyer, great prosecutor. He used to be a jock in college, strung out on a probation officer's floor. He was supposed to be in court, but he couldn't make there because he was getting out of a cocaine high or something like, I don't know what, he was all fucked up on cocaine and booze. He calls me up and he's like ready. So I said, listen, I'll take care of that. I'm going to come by and pick you up and take you to a meeting. And I called up the chief judge and I straightened that out with him, and I go and I pick up Tommy and I take him to a meeting, and he picks up a white chip. And he takes to A like a duck takes to water. I mean, we were drinking buddies together, We were the guys that were closing up the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he loved AA. Now, he had a beard down to here. He had his hair down to here. He didn't have any clean clothes. And within a day, he shaved. He cut his hair. He looked like the jockey that came out of University of Florida, He was 100%, looked like a different human being. And he started going like 1, 2, 3 AA meetings a day. For a month, 2 months. He was doing great. He loved AA. We were going around to AA meetings and stuff. So somewhere around the third month, he calls me up on the phone. And he says, I said, hey, Tommy, what's going on, buddy? He says, listen, I think I have to leave AA. I said, you have to, what do you mean you got to leave? What are you talking about? He says, I got to leave AA. So what do you mean you got to leave AA? You love AA. He says, I know. He says, you love AA. You're crazy about AA. He says, I know. He says, he says, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. What do you mean you don't think you're an alcoholic? Yeah, for 3 months you've been saying that you're an alcoholic. You love AA. You got all these friends in AA. When I picked you up, you're sleeping on the floor of a probation officer strung out on booze and coke and all that crap. And I mean, what do you mean? He says, I know, but I think I have to leave. So then I said, why do you think you have to leave? And then he whispers. He says this. He whispers on the phone. This is a guy, let me tell you, he's one of the top prosecutors, smart guy, intelligent guy. And he whispers, 3 months sober, so it wasn't the alcohol that was affecting his brain, you know? He says, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. He says, I think I may just be crazy. That's what he says. I'm not making this shit up. So I said, Tommy, he says, what? He says, I said, Tommy, he says, what? He says, I said, you can be both. This is what he did. He said, really? Absolutely, buddy. You can be both. He goes like this. He says, oh, man, thank God. I thought I had to leave because I'm fucking crazy. Now, I don't know whether crazy has happened to you yet. I don't know whether you've been sober long enough to realize how nuts you are. But the real serious thing, that's an example of crazy. But what people don't understand is crazy goes on for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I think I still got a little of it. Maybe a lot, because sometimes it's hard to see it unless stuff happens to you.
Yes.
Yeah, let me tell you something. So I sponsor a guy named Kevin. Kevin gets about 3 or 4 months sober. He's a sharp guy, really cool guy, you know. And he would get a job again. He would look good, and he was funny, and everybody loved him. And he hooks up with this gal in AA. She had like 13 months. He had like 3 months or something like this. And and Kevin had a habit. He had a bad habit that every time he got drunk, he got arrested. I don't know. It was like a cop magnet, and maybe because he did crazy shit. And, Marine guy and everything like that. So he links up with this gal. She starts living with her. And one night he calls me up and he said, one time I was talking to him over the phone and the phone went dead. And I said, what happened? Your phone went dead. He says, Lucy, that was his girlfriend, that she cut the phone line. Because apparently, no, this has nothing to do with you guys. There are some women in here that are not that well. I mean, the odds are good, but the goods are off. You know what I mean? It's true. And so he calls me up. This is a true story. He calls me up. He's not sober. He says, Russell, he says, last night, Lucy tried to stab me with shears when I was about to go to sleep. And I say to him, Kevin. As a matter of fact, he had about the same amount of time as Tommy had. I said, Kevin, listen to me. When a woman tries to stab you at night with shears before you go to sleep, that's God's way of telling you it's time to move. And because you got to talk slowly to alcoholics. And he says to me, because he had been going 3 months of AA meetings, he said, Russ, he says, but what about love? What about, because he was sober and smart, he said, what about forgiveness? What about second chances? Don't we give people second chances? What about tolerance? Don't we tolerate people? We just so much. I mean, what about this? And he did it so well and realized I only had a few years at that time. I did what all codependents do, and I started thinking, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, Jumped to conclusions, and like a week later, he was drunk. So he gets drunk, he gets arrested. He gets sent up north to the alcohol treatment thing up. He's in prison, actually, and I forgot the name of the place. What's up? No, not Rayford. No, that's where they put murderers. They don't put drunks there, but it's around Tampa. So he's up there, he's incarcerated, and he meets this gal, Annie. And they actually, he gets paroled and they kick him out and they kick her out or something like that, whatever, and now they're living together. And he's 3 months sober, and I go over to Tampa and I with my wife, and I'm going to meet him at Burns Steakhouse, which is a great steakhouse over in Tampa. And we're sitting there waiting for him. He's not there. And I call him up and I said, Kevin, we're at the steakhouse here, you know, and you're not here. And what's going on? He says, Russell, you wouldn't believe it. I said, what? He says, Annie. She's in the apartment. She's on the balcony in the apartment. They had the walk-up thing with the balcony. He says, and she's screaming at me, and she's got a bottle of vodka in one hand, and she's drunk, and she's got a butcher knife in the other hand, and she's screaming at me. I said, what's she screaming? He says, she's screaming at me to leave. To leave. So I say, Kevin, I want you to listen. He says, what? He says, you need to leave. And he's sober 3 months. And he says, I said, you need to leave. He says, Russ, what about love? What about tolerance? What if I leave? What if she kills herself? What if she hurts herself? I said, what is she doing now? She's screaming. What is she screaming? She's screaming at me to leave. You need to leave. Well, of course, he doesn't leave, and he ends up drunk and arrested and everything like that. You know what that is? That's alcoholism. Sober alcoholism. You didn't understand the word I was saying. So, I had a friend named John. I had 8 years sobriety. He had 11 years sobriety. Great guy. I loved him. We were both lawyers. So one night he says to me, I got 8 years sobriety. I'm sponsoring everybody in the world. I'm speaking at meetings. I'm doing step meetings. I'm doing everything in the world. I'm Mr. AA. I was 8 years on relay, 2 years, intergroup banquet chairman. I was sober. Let me tell you, I was seriously sober. I was so sober, I was dangerous. And he says, look, let's meet tomorrow night at this restaurant. I forgot the name of it, a very famous restaurant at that time. Then we'll go to a meeting. We'll go to an 8:30 meeting. So I go to the restaurant. He's not there. I go to the meeting. He's at the meeting. I said, John, I was at the restaurant. You didn't show up. He says, yeah, something came up. He says, but tomorrow night, let's meet at the restaurant and we'll go to this other meeting. I said, okay. So I go to the second meeting the next night. He's not there. So, and I'm alcoholic, you say you're going to be somewhere in there, and then I got to eat alone and all this, and it's clearly, I didn't do anything wrong. Clearly he's a fucking asshole. Clearly he's at fault. I'm pissed at him. I go to the meeting. I said, I went to the restaurant and you weren't there. He says, oh yeah, something came up. I had to do something. No, I'm sorry or anything like that. Something came up. So now I'm sort of steamed, but he says, but I'll tell you what, if you meet me tomorrow night at this other restaurant, I'll be there and we'll go to this, deal. And so I go to the restaurant. Don't get ahead of me now, and he's not there. No. And I go to the meeting and he's there. He says, yeah, I couldn't make it. Something came up, And now I'm actually going crazy, because this guy's got like 11 years. I got 8 years. He stood me up 3 times and all sort of stuff, and I didn't do anything wrong. So I go and I contact Dane Carell, who at that time had like 40 years. He was an old timer. And I say, I got to talk to you about something. This is unbelievable. And I tell him the entire story I just told you. I just vented out. You know what I mean? And I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm pissed, and I just got to talk about it. And he listens to what I have to say, and then he spends about 20 minutes. And the only thing he wants to talk about is why the fuck I showed up the second time. And I'm looking at him like he's crazy. And the difference between him and me is I had 8 years and I was crazy. but I didn't know I was crazy. And he had 40 years, and he used to be crazy like me, but he knew what crazy looked like. He knew what 8 years insanity looked like in an alcoholic. And after he beat the crap, because you see, I didn't know the answer. The question was, why'd you show up the second time? And the only thing I could say is, I don't know. If you don't know why you showed up the second time or the third time, you're in for a horrible fucking life. Because that means you've been doing that shit for your entire life with people who are not emotionally able to have any connection with anybody, because sober people don't do stuff like that, and decent people are begging for attention and getting upset with the world and how crappy things are when you're the fucking insane one. And I didn't know, because I was sober and I was going to meetings and everything. And then after, he pounded in my mind that there was something really wrong with me, and I had to get myself straight, and I was insane. And insane people end up drinking or feeling sorry for themselves. I finally sort of got it, that there was something wrong with me and things like that. And, you know, when somebody used to come up to me and says, would you do me a favor? I'd say, sure, what is it? Now somebody says, would you do me a favor? I said, I don't know, what is it? Probably not, you know. And then they'd ask me to do a favor for them, and I'd say, no, I can't do that. I learned how to say no. You can't do it. He says, no, I can't. I'm not going to do it. Go find somebody else. I know how to say that. I never knew how to say that, because I want you to like me so much. It's so important that you like me. So important that the 12-step room likes me. I don't want to say anything to piss anybody off. I want you to all love me. When actually what I really want to do is piss the shit out of a whole bunch of people, if I can possibly imagine. Yeah, I want you thinking about me and talking about me. I want 3 guys to go out and drink and say, why'd you drink? Russell made me do it. Russell, I'll take credit for it. Yeah, I made that asshole drink. He needed to drink. He was hanging around here polluting the area. You know, so so I said to him, well, what about John? What's wrong with John? He says he's not sober. I said, no, he's got 11 years. He's not sober. Sober people don't do that. Sober people call you up or apologize. They don't do that. And I said, no. And then 5 years later, John got drunk, and I realized he told me that he had been taking Xanax. That whole time he had been going to a psychiatrist. He wasn't sober. And, you know, here's the deal. Dane Carell knew it. He knew I was crazy because he had been through that, and he knew what alcohol craziness looked like. He knew what alcoholism actually looked like, sober, and I didn't. And you got a whole bunch of people. You ever hear anybody say, I'm sober, not religious? I mean, not sober. What is the word? Spiritual. You ever hear the words, the cliche, I'm spiritual, not religious? I don't think that's in the big book. I don't think it's in the 12 and 12 with Dr. Bob. A lot of those guys are real religious. And they didn't even talk about it. They talked about belief in God, utterly abandon yourself to God. So a lot of people say, you know what the great thing about saying I'm spiritual? I mean, think about it. Alcoholics who are absolutely crazy about material things, about stuff, who are going to meetings complaining about their cell phone missing or losing a job or whatever, the whole life, they're like the material girls of AA, you know? They're like the Madonnas of AA, thinking that because they're sober 8 years, 9 years, 12 years, that they have risen to some sort of evolutionary scale, that they are now spiritual beings, even better than church people, quite frankly, who are hypocrites, not like us, because we're spiritual, because of all the shit we do, because we help a few people, you know what I mean? And I used to believe that shit, you know? And I don't say that anymore. I'm a material man. I'll be a material man till the death. You're spiritual, come up here. I'm going to hit your hand with a ball-peen hammer. We're going to see how spiritual you are when the money leaves. We're going to see how spiritual you are when you get the cancer. We're going to see how spiritual you are when your wife dies or your husband dies. We're going to find out when the shit hits the fan how spiritual you are. And I went through that because I believe that stuff, that somehow I have risen to some sort of point where I am like beyond being hurt, beyond overreacting and everything like that. Let me tell you something. It's going to be a long way down trudging that road. And by the time you get to the point that maybe you have lost fear of people and economic insecurity, the last thing you're going to be saying is how spiritual you are. You know what you're going to be saying? You're going to be saying I'm a material person, and you're going to be talking about the sixth step. Because what that allows you to do when you say I'm spiritual, not religious, is that's the first step in complacency where you can now rest on your laurels because you've already become spiritual. Amen. And you're headed for trouble if you do. And that is just a few, because we're running late, that's like just a few examples of the kind of alcoholic insanity which blinds you to what's really going on in here and why people take their foot off the gas pedal and start thinking that they don't have a problem, and they don't even see the problem until all of a sudden, like LA is burning up down to the ground, and all of a sudden they say, man, I think we have a problem with the fire department. You know, I mean, really, when you think about it, when do the problems really mount up where you realize there's something going on here? When they arrest you for DUI, when you get divorced, when the house goes up in flames, when you're suicidal, when you drink again, when the pressure gets on and all of a sudden you get to that point where all of a sudden out of nowhere you're overwhelmed and your life is over and John doesn't show up or the wife doesn't show up or the money leaves or something, all of a sudden you're not so spiritual anymore. And you start, and then you run into your the nightmare. So here's the nightmare. Remember I said find the nightmare? Anybody ever see the movie Taken? Everybody's seen, you haven't seen Taken? Well, you then forget it. You'll never understand this anyway. So Liam Neeson has a famous conversation on the phone with the kidnappers of his daughter. And this is what he tells them. I don't have any money, but I have a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
That's great.
You know, you see, if you stay sober long enough, you're going to be able to be somebody's nightmare. Somebody's going to show up at your door and start complaining about their boss or complaining about their job or complaining about some sort of bullshit, you know what I mean? And you're going to get to be their fucking nightmare. You are not going to be like their best friend saying, oh, you're so right, that guy's an asshole, you know, you shouldn't have done that, and have a nice gossip. This guy's going to be your nightmare. He's going to tell you shit you don't see, you don't want to see. You're going to get pissed at him, and you're going to leave. And that son of a bitch is going to save your life and change your life.
Amen.
You know?
Yep.
Things that didn't come out on your fourth step or fifth, he's going to change your life. And that's going to go on like forever. You just make sure you find your nightmare out there. Thank you very much.